una deserve bila kasha makashfa. Hii society Kenya wanaeza share ni nyungu ya busa ama keto ya shisha, mfuko zinasikia echo, unajua thamani.
Director, and it is just a pleasure to have you all here this evening. So to all of you, the 24 that have joined us, we're expecting a few more people to come in, but one of our principles is punctuality, and we should start on time, even as people are coming in, just to respect your time and your bundles. So allow me to just open up the session this evening by just doing a couple of things. First of all, welcome to the members of Amnesty International Kenya. And I'm going to ask you to do something as we open up the evening, which is to type into the chat your name and or rather where you're calling in from, and if you can put in the year that you became a member of Amnesty, so 2022 or 2023, or maybe some of you are as old as 61 and therefore you became a member back in the 1970s when Amnesty was first registered. So I'm just going to ask you name and where you're dialing in from, which county, which city, which village are you dialing in from? And then lastly, the year that you became a member. So today is a very special day, not only because it is the first of 10 members only, exclusive members only events, and they're happening every month until the end of the year, but it is also International Women's Day. So I think, let me just start by inviting all of you to put on your cameras for a minute and to just wave at all the sisters on this call. If you can just wave, put on your cameras, and let's just wave to all the sisters. We know that it's difficult being a sister in this world that is run by patriarchs, and even for us men, we sometimes feel the negative impact. So just greet or give a high five to the women that are on this call, but also if you want to turn to any women that are near you without slapping them on the back of the head, just give them a high five. So I see you, Jackie, I see you, Zaina. Welcome. You are honored, you are saluted, and we are proud to have you as part of this movement. So happy International Women's Day to you all. Let me just do a couple of preliminary remarks, which is that, again, this is the first of 10 members only. We have 33,000 supporters in this country. Of course, we are part of a global movement of 17 million members and supporters, but here in Kenya, in this republic, we have 33,000 supporters, and a supporter is somebody who takes action either by signing a petition or writing a letter calling for a human rights issue to be addressed. We have over 2,000 members, so you are part of 2,000 people across the republic, across the 47 counties that are proud to be called Amnesty members. And these are paid up members. These are not members who paid up 10 years ago and still call themselves members. You are people that are providing financial support to the movement and to the organization. So we honor you for that. Allow me also just to mention that several of our members are now organized in circles of conscience. These are chapters. They are found in universities, technical colleges, in schools, and in communities. And the last week or so has seen no less than 14 new circles of conscience come on board. And what they are is groups of members who have come together to take action on particular issues that they would like to. Many of them are among secondary school students, right? So these are the next generation of human rights defenders today, beginning to take action and organizing on their schools. So this is the first hangout of members, and we keep it fairly flexible. The purpose of a hangout like this is essentially to do three things. One is to welcome new members, particularly new members to the movement. It's also an opportunity to deepen our consciousness, our understanding of human rights issues. So every one of these will have an expert who will take us through one of the topics, and I'll talk about the topics when we come to an end. But it's an opportunity to meet each other. So I do hope that you will take the opportunity to speak in these meetings, to put comments on the chats, and to essentially contribute to this space. We will go until 7 o'clock and stop at that point. And also just to mention that in future Kikao, we will actually move to different towns and actually hold physical spaces for those people in those towns. But for those of you who are not there, we will continue to keep this hybrid format. So this is the framework of this evening. I'd like to just start by inviting the technician, Billy, who's our whiz, to just allow us to pause and reflect on who we are as Kenyans and who we are as East Africans. Too funny, too funny. Jumia is not the second national anthem. Operator, tafadhali, go straight to the anthems. Please leave out advertising if possible.
Afrika Mashariki, tuwezeshe kuishi kwa amani, tutimize na malengo yetu. Jumuiya yetu sote tuilinde, tuajibike, tuimarike. Umoja wetu ni nguzo yetu, idumu jumuiya yetu.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Billy, for those two anthems, both of which are prayers, really. They're not just anthems, but they are prayers. Special welcome to all of you who have joined us before, since we've started. Please put your name and where you're calling in from this evening, and also if you can put the date that you became a member. And we see a number of people putting their handles. That's also great. Thank you. Do that. Part of this is really to also connect us and to keep us going. I would like to just specifically call out Sophia Nzaka from Kilifi. She is probably the youngest member. She has been a member for 1 month only. So she is probably the freshest in this call. And not that those of you who have been around since 2014, like myself, are stale. We don't put an emphasis on this at all. But just to note, those of you who have joined. Welcome also Aboy and Jane, also in Nairobi, who joined last month. So I'm going to hand over to a sister by the name of Zaina Kombo. She's a member of staff, but more importantly, she's a member of Amnesty. But before we go there, let me invite Billy to just share our special International Women's Day video.
It's not over.
It is not over.
Yes.
It will not be over.
It will not be.
I will not be quiet. I will not be silent. We will not be silent.
It's not over.
Thank you very much. Zaina, karibu.
Thank you so much, Irungu, and good evening to all members in the house. My name is Zaina Kombo. a member of Amnesty, and a staff member at Amnesty International Kenya. So I have a message for International Women's Day, considering we are embracing equity in the digital age. So the digital age has unlocked a myriad of opportunities and threats in equal measure to the women's movement. Research indicates that over 50% of girls in Kenya have experienced online harassment. On the other hand, the increased levels of sexual violence reporting has been aided largely by digital medium, be it social or mainstream. Today, we celebrate all the women who have chosen to rise above their identities and are taking action to make the world a better place for all. We make special mention of Mama Ebi, who has stood firm to fight for justice for her late daughter. We stand in solidarity with all those who have survived any form of violence and discrimination. Together, we break the code and embrace equity for all. May I request all of us to have our videos on and put our hands across our chest to stand in solidarity and say that we are breaking the code and embracing equity for all. A kind request to put on your video, put your arms across your chest for us to show solidarity to all the women that we are breaking the code and embracing equity for all. Thank you.
And if I can ask the technician as we do this to just change the view so that we can see each other. Let's see how many of us on this call are breaking the code. Put on your cameras for a bit. I know it choose bundles, but I think women are worth it. All right, angle your cameras, those of you who are doing things, and if you're driving, ignore me completely. Stay safe. Luis Magondu, I know that you're a good-looking man. Let me invite you to switch on your camera. Esther, if you're there, welcome to our board member, Esther Mwangi, activist and real champion for rights and land rights in particular. So take a moment, and then I'll invite one of the teams to just take a photograph and tweet. I should mention also, for the purposes of the Kikaos, we're using hashtag Amnesty Dialogues. So if you want to just post and repost Amnesty International Kenya, you can. Thank you very much, everybody. Let us turn to the next part of the conversation. So as I mentioned, part of the power of being a member is that we will assemble and find the best minds, the best thinkers on particular topics, and we will give you the opportunity really to get a bit of coaching, a bit of thinking, and to have discussions with people just like you. And with that, it is my singular kind of honor to invite the next speaker. But just to mention and follow up with Zaina's comment, Wanjiru Samuels, the mother of Ebi Samuel, it's 4 years tomorrow that her daughter was killed. 4 years tomorrow that Ebi Samuel was struck, we think, by the deputy principal of Gatanga CCM secondary school, and died as a result of corporal punishment. And essentially what the issue at stake was Ebi's hairstyle. So I just want to let that sit for a little bit, that there are minors, there are young people that are still not safe, even in places like schools that you would assume would be one of the safest places, or you would expect to be one of the safest places. 39,299 people signed the petition calling for the arrest of the people who killed Ebi Samuels 4 years ago. The good news is a suspect has been arraigned in a court of law. She is in Kiambu High Court, and actually today the judge heard her application for bail. And one of us on this call, a colleague by the name of Dimas Kiprono, was in court to give her the support alongside her lawyer Jackson Degwa or Kiroko Degwa. And we have promised in this case, as we have promised in many other cases, that we will walk with the family of Ebi Samos to make sure that she gets the justice that deserves. So never be told that writing or signing a petition doesn't make a difference. It's taken 4 years for somebody to be taken to a court of law. And that happened because of the public interest and the mobilization that Wanjiru Samuel, Ebi's mother, herself has organized. With that, let me very warmly welcome Japeth Baigun. He is a human rights activist with 10 years experience. He has worked with some of the most interesting organizations, I guess, tasked in Kenya to protect people. He has worked with the Independent Policing Oversight Authority, was in charge of investigations. He's worked with the Truth, Justice and Reconciliation Commission that produced that wonderful set of historical documents that call for rectifying historical injustices. He's trained and is a lecturer at the internationally renowned regional human rights center in Pretoria, and he has won awards for his work. He also happens, and if I can save the best for last, to mention he is also an Amnesty Kenya member. So welcome, Japeth. Karibu sana, take it away.
Thank you, Irungu, for the introduction. Just to confirm, can I be heard loud and clear? Thank you so much. It's really an honor and a privilege to be part of this dialogue and discussion this evening. And as Zaina has mentioned, today really is International Women's Rights Day. So power to all the women in the house, and really standing in solidarity with all of you. And also, and this will be the context of the discussion that I'm going to have today. The first, of course, is that this year, 2023, marks 75 years since the adoption of the very first international instrument on human rights globally, the Universal Declaration of Human Rights that was adopted in Paris, France on 10th of December, 1948. So this year, on 10th of December, we'll be celebrating 75 years since the adoption of the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, the document that really outlines the basic human rights that all human beings across the world are entitled to. The second, of course, the background and backdrop to this discussion is that over the last few weeks here, particularly in Kenya, there's been a lot of discussion about human rights following, of course, the decision of the Supreme Court in the recent case. And therefore, there's been a lot of discussions on the concept of human rights, on its limitations, on where the boundaries lies, and all that. And therefore, I just want to use this opportunity. The essence of this discussion that I'm going to present to you is really on the right to equality, dignity, and non-discrimination. And I thought it wise to approach it by focusing on 3 particular myths. It has been 75 years since the Universal Declaration of Human Rights was adopted, but unfortunately, there are still very stubborn myths that remain when it comes to communities and societies' understandings of human rights. And these myths come to the surface predominantly when certain questions about human rights arise, as we have, for instance, seen here in Kenya. And I want to deal with 3 particular myths. The first is that human rights are granted to us by the state. The second myth is that some human rights are more important than others. And thirdly, that human rights are a Western concept. These are really the 3 lenses that I want to use to have this discussion this evening. So first, onto the first myth. Are human rights granted to us by the state? This is really a myth, and many of us are meant to believe that human rights are actually granted by the state through legislation, through constitution. It may not be a surprise if some of you, and many of us actually even here in Kenya, believe that we get our rights from the Kenyan state, that we get our rights from the Constitution, Chapter 4, the Bill of Rights, or from the legislation that specifies what specific rights we are entitled to. But that is exactly what it is, a myth. Human rights are not granted to us by the state, by legislation, by the Constitution. We have human rights because we are human beings. Article 1 of the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, no wonder it starts exactly there. It says, all human beings are born free and equal in dignity and rights. Essentially, human rights are a birthright. You are not given to it, it's not given to you by anybody else, whether it's the state, individuals, or corporations. You have human rights because you are a human being. It is inherent, it's inalienable to you. And you'll find this expressed in many ways. The confusion that creates the myth is because constitutions and legislation and states then provide the framework for implementing these rights, the framework for enforcing those rights. If your rights are violated, then what should happen? What is the process of claiming those rights in our courts of law? So we should distinguish between human rights that we are entitled simply because we were born, simply because we are human rights, and human rights law as contained in constitutions, in legislation, in youth treaties that countries ratify. So it's important to know that. And as Article 1 of the Universal Declaration of Human Rights says, we are born free and equal in dignity and rights. Here, there are three important things to think about when you think about human rights. The first is equality, that we are all born equal, are all born free. No one is greater than the other. No one has more rights than the other, regardless of where they were born, how they were born, and all that. The second is dignity, that actually dignity is at the core, at the heart of human rights, that each and every one of us really, regardless of again, where, how, and other factors, we have dignity, and that dignity needs to be preserved, respected, and protected. The other important element of understanding human rights is non-discrimination, that race, religion, social status, ethnicity, color, political opinion, and other factors should not define how or which rights you should enjoy or not enjoy. So equality, dignity, and non-discrimination. No wonder if you go into Article 19 of our Kenyan Constitution, what does it say? It says that the purpose of recognizing and protecting human rights and fundamental freedoms is to preserve the dignity of individuals and communities, and to promote social justice and the realization of the potential of all human beings. So essentially, Article 19 really expresses, it articulates, it puts in word what really is the essence of human rights. So essentially, never be allowed to never allow yourself to think that it is the state that gives you rights. If we were to imagine that it's the state that gives us rights, or the constitution that gives us rights, then one could argue that before 2010, then we didn't have human rights in Kenya. Or before 1963, before the Kenyan state was created, we didn't have human rights. That will be absurd, that will be awkward, because long before the Kenyan state was born, long before the constitution was adopted, we as Kenyans had rights. And that's why even during the colonial period, we demanded rights. We demanded that we be respected as human beings, and that we live in a free country where we are all free in dignity and rights. The second myth, which is related to the first myth, is that some human rights are more important than others. If human rights, we are born with them, if it is inherent in us, it is really because of our humanity that we enjoy human rights, then it cannot be that some human rights are more important than others. But more often than not, you will hear these claims on social media, on TV, in writings, that some rights are more important. For instance, social and economic rights, the right to food, the right to health, the right to to housing is more important than the right to freedom of expression, association, or assembly. You'll hear this, that the right to food is more important than the right to protest, to assemble. But when you examine very keenly, these rights are intricately tied. They are interconnected. The Vienna Convention of 1993 perhaps puts it in the best of ways. It says all human rights are universal, indivisible, and interdependent and interrelated. Consider, for instance, the COVID-19 situation. Of course, at that point, one would have said that the right to health is the most important right currently. But again, we saw that in certain states, individuals who tried to raise questions about the state's the state's response to COVID-19 was silenced. Therefore, the right to speak was also important in ensuring that the state responds adequately to the COVID-19 pandemic. The right to association is intricately tied, for instance, to the right to association. The right to dignity is intricately tied to the right to life. So these rights are interdependent, interconnected, and indivisible. Of course, in particular points and in particular moments, one right may seem to be the most relevant at that particular point. But in the end, all rights are important. And it's important also to note that in most situations where the state, for instance, or individuals or corporations argue that one right is more important than the other, it is usually because those that are claiming those rights that are deemed not important are usually challenging the status quo, whether it's patriarchy, whether it's dictatorship, whether it's authoritarianism. The moment you hear individuals, corporations, the state arguing that those rights are not important at this particular point in time, it is always because they try to muzzle, to crack down on those particular rights. It's because those rights, when demanded, are challenging the status quo. So I think it's important for us to get it clear that all rights, all of them that human beings are entitled to, are important and are at par. The third and final, and this again is connected very intricately with the first and the second myths, is that human rights are a Western concept. You will always hear these discussions about the fact that these rights have been claimed came from the West. They were born in the West and have just been transplanted, for instance, to Africa, or in our particular case, to Kenya. It is important to note that while historical, cultural, religious background must in any way be borne in mind in the implementation of human rights are truly universal. If we are to agree that we enjoy human rights as a result of our humanity, as a result of the fact that we were born with them, then it really does not matter whether we are in Africa, whether we are in Europe, whether we are in Australia, Oceania, or in which parts of the world. Human rights are universal. Again, whenever you hear that a pushback against human rights on the basis that they are a Western concept, you will always find that below the surface, there is an attempt to silence specific rights, because those rights challenge the status quo, those rights challenge, for instance, dictatorship or patriarchy, and that claims to cultural diversity or cultural universalism is really to try and dilute the power of human rights as a universal right, as universal values that are enjoyed by everyone across the world. Often, claims against human rights on the basis of universality or the fact that some are more important than others, you will find in many cases they are meant to justify violations of human rights. So it's important for us, I think, at the end of this discussion to come with clarity on these three specific issues. That one, human rights are not granted to us by specific entities, but they are inherent in us as human beings. And that two, all rights are important, beginning from the right to life, to the right to dignity, right to health, right to food, right to freedom of expression, association, assembly, freedom from torture. And all rights that are entitled to us as human beings, and that finally we here in Kenya, in Africa, have the same claim to human rights because we are human beings, and that these are not necessarily Western concepts. Africa, for instance, has adopted its own treaties that articulate our understanding and conception of human rights. We have adopted by our own free will and agency our constitution that lays down the Bill of Rights through which we can claim human rights in our courts of law. So it's also important to know that the courts of law are used to enforce human rights, primarily because if everything was left to the majoritarian society, then the weak will be suppressed and oppressed, as we have seen historically, not just in Kenya, but across the world, where certain groups, certain individuals are not allowed to enjoy human rights because the majority feel that this should be the norm or the particular position of the society. And this is where the courts come in. In the greatest majority of rights that we enjoy today, here in Kenya and across the world, it's primarily because, for instance, courts have come to the aid of the weak in society. They have come to the aid of those that are oppressed, suppressed. Not so long ago in this world, women were not allowed to vote. And it's the courts that, for instance, came and said that women and men are equal and need to vote on an equal balance. Not so many ago in countries like the United States, schools were segregated. Whites and blacks would go to different schools, and who allowed for integration and for everyone to access the schools. It was the court, the Supreme Court of the US. So courts can serve as tools. The law can serve as a driver for protection of especially minority groups, of especially groups that are oppressed or suppressed in society by the majority. So I think I just want to stop it there and will allow for questions and answers. But I want us to go home this evening, or if you're already home, to have these 3 points in mind. That one, human rights are granted to us by the fact that we are human beings. 2, no right is more important than the other. And 3, human rights are not a Western concept. Even long before the West landed on African continent, for instance, there were conceptions and understandings of human rights, though not framed as such or articulated as such, but they were certain values that really corresponded to what we know today as human rights. Irungu, I'll stop there, and I hope that has given us fodder for discussion this evening. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Japheth. I feel like I have come out through that with a bit of a PhD. So Japheth actually trains and coaches and lectures academically, and people do end up coming out with masters and PhDs. But as activists, our PhDs are really the impact that we make on the world. So we do need from time to time to stop and think about theory and be able to work. So I'm just going to open up and invite comments and questions. And again, if I can draw your attention to the section at the bottom of your Zoom page, you can simply just indicate your hand, and we will take first come, first served in terms of comments. Keep your comments and your questions short as possible, and we'll try and get as much of a discussion going before we come to a close on the hour at 7 o'clock. So let's open up the conversation a little bit. So obviously, the presentation by Japheth talked about equality, really the idea that we are born free, born with dignity, born with rights. Some of us who are a certain age bracket, we may have thought that Born Free was the name of a movie about lions, but I think we have learnt better this evening. So I'm going to invite comments and questions. I guess one place to start really is to just reflect on the significance of International Women's Day, really, and think a little bit about, what have we learnt from women's struggles for equality, from their experience as a marginalized group, and as we slowly move into a world that is more gender equal. Not that we are there yet, but we are definitely much further than we were 20 years ago. What can we learn that we could take to other marginalized groups, whether they be displaced persons, whether they be victims of extrajudicial killings, whether they be people with disabilities, whether they be any form of minority, whose rights are not respected and whose dignity is not respected by virtue of the fact that they're human beings. So let me see, have we got any hands yet? The first person, I'm sure, can pick up, can just switch on their mic. Let me just check with the moderators whether they are giving people the power to be able to speak. So let's kick off there. Who would like to go first? I'm told there is a place reserved in heaven for those of you who are Christians, for the people who speak first on Zoom calls. Okay, I just made that up, right? It's not quite true. So don't sue us. Let's go on. 39 of us are on the call. Well done, everybody. Thank you for coming in. Is there a woman that would like to kick this conversation off? As we acknowledge all of you are coming in, keep sharing your names, locations, and the year you became an Amnesty member. And also you can post using the hashtags Amnesty Dialogues and #IamAmnesty. Any thoughts that come to you? Let's see. Let me suggest that we change the view so we can see each other on the screen. And that will help me also to be able to identify people. I apologize if I come to you. It's either your name is looking great or it is you are looking great. So I will pick on those of you who are positioned. Billy, if you can change the view. Yep, I think we're there now. Great. Okay, let me, let's see, who was that? Somebody wanted to come in? Is that you, Jackie?
I don't think it was me, but let me come in.
Welcome, Jackie Benjo.
Thank you. I think, okay, so my name is Jackie Menjo. I'm a women's rights lawyer. I think what I would say that other movements can borrow from the women's movement is resilience. I think when the women movement began, there was a lot of pushback, there was a lot of misunderstanding of women's rights, and it was taken as when you advocate for women's rights, you're against men. You know, the same way when you advocate for Black people, they think you're against white people. But instead, you're just fighting a system that benefits the other side. So for me, is resilience in whatever you believe in, and constant advocacy. I don't think advocacy ever ends. It's an everyday thing. So in terms of equality in all spheres of life, I think resilience and constant advocacy and patience, because there's a lot of misunderstanding, especially on social media. You know, sometimes you get angry, you see people who don't understand some of the things, but it takes a lot of patience to explain to them, because at the end of the day, they're also victims of, in this scenario, patriarchy. You'd also see some women who are called pick-me's on social media, and you'll hear people say, oh, women are their own enemies. But that's such a misconception, because those are women who are still also victims of patriarchy. So trying to put women against each other also doesn't help. So for me, it's resilience and constant advocacy, patience as you're advocating, and results will come in with time, as we've seen in the women's movement. Ooh, it's hot. Yeah, that's it.
Yeah, no, thanks very much, Jackie, for those comments. Let's go to Dimas. I think I see your hand. And let me just warn Samuel Nganga that I noted that he joined Amnesty in 2012. So I'm going to come to you in a minute to comment. Dimas, over to you. And maybe you can also give us an update a little bit on the case. You've been in court today with Wanjiru Ebi.
So, okay, let me start with the update that we appeared in court and argued out the application. So the family of accused argued that they want her to be given bail. We argued against that, citing the possibility of contaminating witnesses, and the judge will require and give a ruling on 27th of April. Coming to today's discussion, I just wanted to note a point in which usually whenever equality starts creeping in, it is usually the privileged that start feeling marginalized. And what can be to ensure that we keep everyone informed, so that, for example, they say that the boy child right now is under siege. Yet, if you look at all indicators, school attendance, level of abuse, and opportunities, it's still the girl child that is suffering. Thank you.
Great comments. Again, comes back to Jackie's point. To be for something doesn't mean that you're against something. It just simply means that you are pushing for something. Let me see whether I've managed to persuade Samuel Nganga to offer us a thought in terms of what he's getting from the conversation so far. Samuel Nganga, are you there? And let me just announce to everybody that I have had no prior conversations with anybody, so nobody is being set up. The reality is that I'm just calling upon you in a spirit of membership. All right, let me see. I don't see Samuel coming in, so let me go to Zaina, who has put up her hand.
I want to add onto what Menjo already spoke about. In addition to being resilient, we need to organize and we need to be consistent in our messaging. All the minorities and marginalized groups need to hear this, because it is very important to be consistent in the messaging that we are putting out in our advocacy, and organize, reorganize, learn and unlearn. As we move, the dynamics are changing. Every day something new crops up. We are breaking those barriers one by one. But even in the women's movement, if you look at breaking the ceilings, you find out that there are layers of ceilings, and it's not just one. So the moment we broke the ceiling in 1995, we've continued to break the ceiling, but it seems to be a very thick one. We are not yet there, but we are making strides and we are moving. So the same message will go to other minority and marginalized groups, that once you skip a barrier, it doesn't mean that's the end of the journey. There will be more and more barriers to be broken, and therefore we need the consistency and we need to organize and reorganize. Thank you.
Great. Thank you very much. Malcolm X would say, organize, because organization decides everything. I think that's another way of putting what Zaina said. Let me go to Ismail Mohammed. Where are you joining us from this evening, and what's your comment or question? And you may have to unmute. I can see your hands. Try and unmute. And again, just raise your electronic hands, people, those of you who'd like to come in, and we'll get through as many as possible before we pull this to a close. Yeah, I think we're still struggling to get Ismail on the mic. Let me perhaps turn to, let's go slightly southern to the coast. I can see one of my favorite members, Rahma Babala. Are you there, sister? Can you join us? What are you getting from the conversation so far?
I'm really getting good.
Na kwani uko wapi? Where are you?
I'm at home.
Okay, nyumbani ni wapi for the rest of us?
I stay at Mtwapa, just at the creek.
Karibu kutoka Mombasa. What are you getting from the conversation so far, Ahmed?
I'm really learning also, and also it's a good conversation, and I'm so inspired by. I'm seeing most of my leaders here, and then also like I wanted to share something today. Someone challenged me about the celebration of International Women's Day. She actually told me, like, we need to focus on those people who are marginalized, especially there are some areas in Mombasa, like there are people who are denied rights. Like, we need to focus on them and not the bigger picture. Like, for example, maybe some staff, maybe in a certain company or in at Amnesty celebrating the International Women's Day, or maybe on the social media, like, we need to go inside and help the young women at the street. Yeah.
Good point.
Yeah.
Indeed, a challenge. Any other hands? Let's see. Others who may be on the call. Samuel Karanja, Karibu. Tell us where you're from and where you're dialing in from, and share a comment or a question. And if you can put your camera on, even better.
Hi, Rungu. Hi, everyone.
Hi.
Thank you so much. I think that's a very good discussion that has been led by Japheth. Just a reminder on common myths on human rights and the entitlement that we have as human beings. And just to reiterate on the role of women on the journey towards human rights and women's rights, probably it would take us back to the early 90s. One story that comes to my mind is when women organized the Release Political Prisoners forums. And just recently I was reading articles by parents of the mother of Koigi Wamwere, people like the late Wangari Maathai, and just powerful women who really led the conversation. And as Jackie mentioned, it is very important for us men to also join hands whenever special interest groups are advocating for their rights. And I think maybe Japheth, the next time Irungu invites you for trading, because you're very eloquent and very straightforward. The conversation on LGBTIQ appears in our WhatsApp groups, in our centers of conscience, in other Amnesty forums, at our workplace, at school, in our families and in our communities. And sometimes we feel ill-equipped to be part of that conversation. So probably that would be a good area of focus next time. Thank you. And I'm speaking to you from Langata in Nairobi.
Great. So I think great comments, Samuel. I think we might ask Japheth to come in and just give a reflection. And of course, because he works at the Africa level, perhaps he can give us an African perspective, Pan-African perspective on the issue of LGBTIQ as well. Let's take any other comments and questions from folks on the call. Rogers. Rogers is particularly important to me because my late father's name was Roger. And I always have the sense that there are very few in the world, these Rogers. So Roger, are you there? Do you want to take the mic? And I'm apologizing if I'm calling people out as they're in matatus or in public service vehicles or various other places where they will get thrown out if they, but actually what they could do is just turn us onto speaker and bring in the whole matatu into this conversation. That would be bold and audacious. All right, Roger's not coming in. Let me see if Kelly, you're there. I can see you. I don't know if you have a comment you would like to make on this as well. Sorry, you're now muted. Just mute again.
Can you hear me?
Very clearly now.
Good. Hi guys. Good evening to everyone. My name is Kelly Ngeti from Mombasa. And I'm so happy to have joined the call, although I came a bit late and just found the presentation on human rights. And I think I've been one of the people who constantly believed that the rights that we have were given to us. So today I'm very much uplifted. I feel fired up to go and claim more rights that I normally felt were being given. And I really thank so much for the presentation. It has really nourished me and given me a lot of support as we continue on this platform and this one. Thank you.
Thanks, Kelly. Great comment. Really great comment. Things that are given to us can be taken away. Things that we are born with, they are ours. That's the real power of this, you know. Nobody can take away these rights. So if they take away the Constitution, the 2010 Constitution, these rights are still ours. Great points. Japeth, I don't see any other hands. Maybe I can invite you to come in and give a commentary just on any of the things that you've heard, but also if you want to just give us a stab at the I guess the topic of the hour, which is LGBTIQ, given the Supreme Court ruling, the discussions in Parliament and in our churches and our mosques also.
Thank you, Irungu. Can you?
Yeah, we can hear you. Or rather, we could.
Hello.
Yep, great.
Hello, Irungu. Can you hear me?
Can hear you very clearly now.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. Most of the speakers, right from Jackie to Ellie at the very last, really were about comments, all of which I completely agree with, you know, beginning with resilience. And resilience has been seen not only in the context, for instance, of the fight for women's rights, but in many other fields of human rights. One good example that I usually give in the context of justice and accountability is the fight for justice for the crimes that were committed in Chad by Hisne Habre. Those crimes were committed in the early 1980s, when human rights organizations like Amnesty International would go into Chad and collect evidence of those violations of torture in prisons. And we would adopt prisoners as prisoners of conscience in the early 1980s. And at that time, it would have seen quite a pipeline dream to think that Hisne Habre will be brought to justice. But we know more than 20 or so years ago, in 2016, Hisne Habre was convicted of torture and other crimes against humanity that were committed in Chad in 1980s. If it were not for the resilience and patience of Amnesty members, Amnesty International, and other human rights groups for pushing from the 1980s, 1990s, the 2000s, all the way to 2016, perhaps Hisne Habre would not have been arrested, he would not have been convicted of those crimes. So resilience is really at the core of human rights, primarily also because human rights change often in many things. Death penalty, the work around our death penalty, the right around recognition of socioeconomic rights, the right around adoption and enactment of anti-torture laws, more often than not, they take a long time. So for us really to see human rights change in the long term, we have to have resilient, but also a long-term view and be patient, ensuring that we claim every small success as part of the bigger success when things finally change. I think Samuel Karanja has made a good proposal, I think, for perhaps a deep dive session on the question of LGBTIQ rights or sexual minority rights. I'm not sure we can be able to really to do justice for it here, but perhaps just to mention that the right to non-discrimination, I think that is usually the starting point. And when we say about race, ethnic, social status, sex, gender, courts, not just the reason, the Supreme Court of Kenya, by the way, is a latecomer in this discussion. Courts across the world, the regional courts, international courts have long held that individuals, regardless of their identity, regardless of the group to which they belong to, as long as they are not propagating hate or hate speech, then they are entitled to all the rights that are provided for under the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. What laws against sexual minority does is to criminalize really love. yet we know that the idea of love is an innate issue. And here, most of the time, and I guess perhaps this is why we need a deep dive. In most of these conversations, there is usually a confusion between what is sexual orientation and what is gender identity. Sexual orientation is a person's physical, romantic, and or emotional attractiveness towards other people. Every one of us has a sexual orientation. And predominantly, many people would identify as heterosexual, or others would identify as gay or as lesbian, or have attract to same-sex individual. The laws that criminalize same-sex conduct, whether it's same-sex sex or same-sex conduct of holding hands and all that, what they actually usually do is to police bodies. And we see this and policing love, and we see this across many fields. And the moment it becomes okay for a society to criminalize a certain group of people on the basis of their identity, then it becomes easy to criminalize other groups. And we've seen this at one point, and many people would tell you that, it is against the law, but we know that there are unjust laws in this country. During the Hitler time, the laws against Nazis were considered a part of the legal system. So it's important, I think, to understand that non-discrimination is at the core of this discussion. The policing of individual bodies, not just of individual bodies of men and women, also comes into play when we are discussing questions of LGBTI. Now, part of what is also confusing is that it's the question of gender identity, which is separate from sexual orientation. Gender identity is a deeply felt and experienced sense of one's own gender. In many instances, our gender is assigned at birth, either male or female. And in many instances, the gender that is assigned at birth corresponds actually with the sex of that individuals. But there are people who grow up feeling that they are in the wrong body. Transgender people, for instance, feel that they're in the wrong body. They are perhaps in a male body, but they feel they're female, or they are in a female body, but they feel that they are male. So it's important, first and foremost, to begin with the basics of understanding what's the difference between sexual orientation, what's the difference and gender identity, and what is at the core of the right that is being discussed. In the particular case of Kenya today, what the Supreme Court did mention, and perhaps Dimas may want to come into this discussion, was the issue at the court was the right to association, the right of human rights defenders to claim or to seek the recognition of the right of LGBTI. So the question of whether LGBTI is wrong or right was not before the Supreme Court. The question was the right of association as protected under the Constitution, and whether individuals can come together to seek the recognition of the rights of LGBTI. Across the continent, we've seen the rise of laws that try to criminalize LGBTI. But more importantly, I think for us, like a takeaway, the African Commission on Human and People's Rights, which is a body that seeks to protect human rights across the continent, has adopted a resolution that says that regardless of what you think about LGBTI, then they have the rights, the same me and you that have, and especially the right not to be targeted, not to be stigmatized. Because what happens then is that even extortion by police officers, extortion in prisons, or harassment just because of the perceived or real sexual orientation or gender identity of those individuals. I'm not sure I can be able to do justice, Irungu or Samuel, to this subject at this point in time, but I think that's just my initial thoughts on that question. Thank you, Irungu.
Thank you very much, Japhet. Let me see whether Dimas would like to add any thoughts to any of the things that have been said so far. If not, we'll open up again, inviting you all to raise your electronic hands. And of course, the theme of today really is equality, and with a special focus on International Women's Day. Okay, let me see if there are any other comments or questions from folks. I mean, I think one of the big arguments that maybe worth generating, and I'll come to Jocelyn first. One of the first questions is really, you know, are we making progress on women's rights? And I think Dimas touched on it a little bit, but one does get a sense that there's a backlash that some are now saying, we've gone too far. People should have the right to go through female genital mutilation. The Sexual Offences Act has swung too far in one direction. Married women should not claim half of the estate that has been generated in the time of marriage. These are some of the things we're now starting to hear a lot more. Let me go to Jocelyn first, and Jocelyn, let me invite you, if you can, to unmute, and if possible, also switch on your camera so that we can enjoy you a little bit better than the black spot. There we go. Karibu, sister, how are you?
I'm fine, thank you. And you?
Very well, huh?
Yeah, I'm Jocelyn, for those who don't know me. I'm so happy to be here, to be associated with Amnesty, to be working for Amnesty. And I'm lucky to be celebrating Women's Day here in Nairobi with human rights defenders. So it is Amnesty that has brought me this far, and I'm so happy. And for women, at least, okay, thank you so much for the presentation, though I joined late. We finished our conference late. I joined late, and there's a question we've asked on issues of land ownership and the rest. And I think that is a challenge to county, knowing that culture has really rooted, and women talking of land and the rest is something that is hard. And Amy is a witness. She has been there. Every time you mention something like that, they feel like you don't belong to the community, you are an outcast. Now you want to go against the culture. But I think it's time that women should be given room, and I think they've been given. Same as in some areas, 60%, some 50%, they can express what they feel. Though again, there is a danger that now the focus is so much on women, and we are also forgetting the boy child. So as defenders, as we fight for women, fight for girls, fight for young children, let's not forget the boy child, because a girl will not stand also alone. A society will be complete when all of us are complete and strong. Otherwise, thank you so much, and we are happy. I'm happy to see you, Irungu.
I need to come visit you in Wasingishu. That I think is the option there. Let me just ask a personal question. The child that is crying in the background, we're actually not crying, just sounding very happy. Is that a boy child or a girl child?
Wow, this is a girl child. She also young defender.
Oh, very good. Happy International Women's Day to her also.
Thank you.
Thanks for your comment.
Thank you so much.
Let's go to Rogers. Over to you. And Rogers, if you can switch on your camera as well, if possible.
Okay. Good evening.
Evening.
Yeah. I'm Rogers from Kisumu, currently based in Kabianga, University of Kabianga. And I'm a human rights student. Currently, we have the program, Bachelor of Arts in Human Rights in Kabianga, and I'm an aspiring defender. And I've really enjoyed the conversation. So one of the issues that I would like to focus or would like to emphasize for us is about defending the defenders. And we have seen many things like the EDs, the enforced disappearance and the extrajudicial killings throughout the emerging issues right now. Like, so what inspired me this year was the issue of case, which was a success. Though it took long, but it was a success. It inspired me as a defender. Secondly, the issue of Ribayala. Ribayala, I don't know where the case has progressed on up now. I've been following it, but it's like it has gone silent, which I'm worried. And thirdly, how people that it is causing panic and fear to the aspiring young defenders, like the issue of Tulani Maseko. Most of the defenders are just.
Okay. Thank you very much, Rogers. The line was cracking, but I think we caught quite a bit of that. So particularly the thing that came home to me was the issue of Yala. So we'll come back to that in a minute. Let me go to Jackie and then Kelly.
There is a disappearing.
Oh, sorry, Rogers, let me try again. Can you hear us?
Yes, I'm hearing.
Okay, sorry, maybe you can just make your last point again. It didn't come through very clearly.
My last point. My last point is on the progressive rights. The society is dynamic, not static. So there are some rights like the LGBTQI and the rights to abortion. So it's a challenge that most people still don't understand. And giving us challenge, trying to explain it to someone, people are mistaking it to someone is very weird. That's
that one. I think definitely I will invite Prof to come back in again, Japheth, just to speak about the issue of progressive rights. What does it mean for us as human rights activists? Let's take let's go Jackie, Kelly, Alphonse in that order.
Yeah, so I just wanted to comment something that's usually very common in the agenda for gender equality. A misconception we hear a lot is women and men can never be the same. So why are we fighting for them to be the same? This year's theme for International Women's Day was embracing equity. And the difference between equity and equality is equity recognizes that each group has different circumstances. I wish there's a picture that usually portrays equity in the right way. So instead of giving everybody the same kind of like stool to stand on so that they can see something, you give each person a different stool depending on their height. Because now if I'm short and let's say Samuel is tall and you give us the same stool, it won't really help me because I need a taller stool. So that's the same thing with affirmative action. So in line with this year's theme of gender equity, it's focusing more on using the strengths of women to promote gender equality, because in real sense, women will never be like men and men will never be like women. The same way women are the only ones who can get pregnant. So you see, considering that circumstance, we look for initiatives that still push for equality for women in that sense. So I just wanted to highlight that this year's theme is focusing more on equity, which I think will help most people understand that women are not looking to be like men. We are just looking to be accepted with our strengths and weaknesses. That's number one. Number two, there was a discussion on Phyllis Jepleting that we were supposed to discuss. I think she was a victim of femicide. And I think it's important today, being International Women's Day, to also acknowledge the rising rates of femicide in the country. And it's becoming a real issue. Some scholars have actually referred to it as a form of genocide. So I think it's also important that we we talk more about femicide in our social platforms to our family members, because it's still a very new concept to people. So when you say it, people will just say, oh, it's another creation that feminists have created, but it's a real thing. So those are my comments. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Jackie. Let's go to Kelly. And again, let me invite you to switch on your camera. Yeah, there we go.
Yeah, sure. So I just want to make a comment in regards to International Women Day and how far probably the women have come. Particularly from my experience, I think the things I've been hearing when I was a little boy and the things that I'm seeing now, I can quickly say that there is a lot of progress that has been made. There's a lot of achievement that has been made. Some of the beliefs, some of the taboos that were initially there, particularly speaking from the context of coast region. There are so much that women were not allowed to do. Women were not allowed to work. Women were not allowed to own businesses. Women were not allowed to, it was a taboo to do it, etc. In fact, women are not even allowed to go to meetings. It was set aside for men. And so up to this point, there's a lot of achievement, there's a lot of progress that has been done. And I think as we continue to push for all rights and for the rights of women,
unfortunately, I think Kelly has hung at a point where he was about to land very powerfully. Let's give him a second just to see whether the, as our president would say, the network catches him. Okay, let's go to Alphonse and come back to Kelly. Kelly, if you can hear me, we'll come back to you in a minute. Alphonse, over to you. Alphonse, you're muted. If you can.
I've unmuted.
Yeah, you're clear.
So thank you. Happy to see you.
Happy to see you, bro.
Yeah, I'm happy to be a member since 2019, and we have been making inroads in where we are. Yeah, I just want to appreciate, though I joined late, the moderator and even the advice we have got from one who was presenting. I just had a concern that as members, actually, we are living in a society where there is still what we call the so-called discrimination. An example of where I work, where the girl child is still left behind, and we realize that even the parents still help them engage in what we call early pregnancy. Like I have a case where a girl, the mother encouraged the girl to conceive, to convince the church members and the community that the girl is not barren. So I'll just request members that where we come from diverse community, and the understanding of the parents are still low about the right of us. Like that girl now, being that she conceived, the girl is now delivered and now cannot concentrate in her studies. So it is something that we need as members to look into seriously and educate the community about our rights. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Alphonse. And you are from the Bay of Homa, otherwise known as
Homa Bay. Correct.
Represent.
Thank you.
So a few weeks ago, the Kenya Demographic and Health Survey was released. There were lots of articles on this issue. So some of you probably saw the articles, Embu, New Pills Paradise, Migori Men, the Kings of Rubber. These were all the articles, the headlines that people kind of focused on. And the one quote, the one statistic that everybody remembers is that something like Kenyan men are having on average 3 times more sexual partners than women. The details a bit more we were actually quite shocked and horrified, I think like Alphonse. So something like, 1 in 3 girls over the age of 15 years have experienced physical violence, 1 in 3 girls. Girls are 6 times more likely than boys to experience sexual violence. And this is in 2022. But the thing we need to also note, and this is where I think the point that was made by our sister earlier, is that that boys are far less likely to report or to seek help or injustice for justice because there is stigma attached for some boys in being able to say that they have been raped or they have been defiled. Now, the thing that really struck me as a married man of 10 years or more is the statistic that said that actually sexual violence increases as girls and boys grow older, and that you are twice as more at risk as a married woman than a single woman from violence within your relationship, right? So I think there is a lot of work that we need to do, and sadly Phyllis Chepleting or Ivy Wangeshi, who we've seen progress in her case last week, too many of our sisters are going through this experience, and too many of us, women and men, and non-binary persons, are not doing enough to take on these issues. So I think it's an area that we can rededicate ourselves in this year to taking on more issues. Let me see whether I saw Zaina's hand earlier. I don't know if you want to come in again as you're being called on the group there. Council Zaina.
I just wanted to highlight one issue that I feel cuts across all the discussions that we've had regarding human rights, that we as human beings need to be conscious of other human beings and realize that other people are not commodities that you can sell or that you can push around, that they have red blood just like you have, that they have feelings, that they also deserve to exist without fear. So regardless of the identity, the primary identity that we need to focus on is that they are human. So whatever violation they go through is not proper and should not be tolerated. There is the myth that speaks about women being enemies of the other. This is a myth that we need to crush, because it speaks to those who've gone through violations but did not heal from the trauma of whatever violation they went through. In whatever case, whether male, female, or any gender or sexual orientation, individuals go through violation and they come out either of 2 things, either as a perpetrator or as a healed individual who can now then distinguish what is good and bad and decide that I'm going to be proactive in becoming a good human. So anyone can be a perpetrator after a violation. I thought that was important because it cuts across all these conversations that we are having, whether it's women, whether it's other minority groups, religious groups. Everyone just needs to be conscious that other people are also human beings and deserve dignity, respect, love, and most of all, just appreciate that they also bleed like we do. Thank you.
And I think as far as my limited biology would tell me that the blood will be the same color. Let me just shift gears a little bit before we pull this to a close. We're coming close to the end. We promised to release you so that you can go off and do other things at 7 o'clock. But I want to suggest, first of all, to just make quite an important announcement. Over the last month or so, we have speaking with parliamentarians in the National Assembly, and 14 parliamentarians have come together to form the Kenya Democracy and Human Rights Caucus. And this is a caucus that is chaired by Honorable Yusuf Hassan, Member of Parliament for Kamkunji. And we had the opportunity to organize a roundtable for them and about 60 human rights and governance organizations, not just NGOs, but mass-based associations, Law Society of Kenya, the Health Workers Union, teachers unions and head teachers associations, among others. And they've asked us to essentially help them to form, I guess, to frame their priorities. So on the chat, as we come to a close, I'm going to, and I will invite Rahma to make the point that she wanted to make, and then maybe close off with Japheth. But on the chat, if I can request you to just click on the link, it's safe. It should take you to an MS form. And I'm going to ask you to just in the course of this last few minutes to give your priorities for the Democracy Caucus. They're young, they're dynamic. There are good people there from across the different political parties. We have KJ, John Kiaria Waweru, Dagoretti South, but we also have Naisula Lesuda, who's also a member of that committee, and Millie Odhiambo, among others. Let's give them some guidance. So if you can click on the link and just in a different what do you call it, a browser, please just complete that link for us. It will help us to give them direction. One of the things they've asked us to do also to support them with the establishment of a secretariat, and we're making strong recommendations to them that they meet with people in different parts of the county. So we will, once that's set up, we will post where they will be meeting people in different parts of the country, and you may have an opportunity to meet with the Democracy Caucus wherever you are in the Republic. Okay, let me first of all invite Rahma to give her comment. We are very close to closing, so I'll ask Rahma if you can do it in a minute or so, and then I am tempted to give Eliud Karani also another minute, and then we'll give a final minute to Japheth before we pull this to a close. So please, as you're listening to the conversation, complete the link that's there. And for those of you who got disconnected, Karibu, welcome back. There's been a request for a readout of this session, so we will pull this together and maybe circulate it to members with the next announcement of the next Kikao. Rahma, back to you.
Okay, thank you. Good evening, everyone. Mine is just to make a comment on women, especially those who are married. There are many cases at the Council of Imam and Preachers of Kenya, women who have been, I can say, like violated, they are beaten by their husbands. And you will find out that the center, the CIPK in Mombasa, how they solve this issue, they usually prioritize the men because of their religion. And we'll say most of the women are really complaining. I've found like so many have been complaining about them being facing violation, especially from their husbands. And it's high time we need to look into these centers where these cases are being reported, especially in Mombasa. And CAPK is one of them. And if we can assist in handling this issue and also counseling the women who they are psychologically and emotionally affected, it will really be of help, and also to empower them, because most of them are young, because most of us Muslim women, we get married earlier, so most of us do not know the rights. So it's good if they can be empowered, and also those who are actually being reported the cases to the center, they also get the empowerment on how to handle these issues.
Thank you very much, Rahma. Important point there. Karani, over to you.
Yes, Sirungu. Sorry, I have a blackout. But yeah, this is still in the office. This is my niko kwa village huku Busia County.
Busia represented.
Yeah. But this is my first meeting. I've been looking forward to this. I think ever since I subscribed for my membership. I was wondering, your team was very dormant, but I saw something on my email about the meetups. I'm even supposed to have a T-shirt and I think a notebook or something. I don't know if I can come for it on Friday. I will be in Nairobi.
Our doors are open. Come to the office.
I think I will come, and I look forward. I've been seeing you on TV, but I'm very glad. So me, I'm passionate about this advocacy, and I work with the children's department. In fact, I'm still in the office. I was doing a report for a case of a defilement, yeah, of a 16-year-old who was being defiled by, someone who came from Uganda for Shamba Boy, yeah. So that happens a lot within the border. People come to work as Shamba Boys, and they defile girls and so on. But with regards to the International Women's Day, we had a very successful event here in the village, with the women being very passionate, so against LGBTQ. Yeah, one in fact pulled another woman and said that if I've given birth to you, carried you for 9 months, and you bring me another girl when I'm looking forward to seeing my wajukus, yeah, that is an abomination. And another one pulled a man and said that I have raised you, I've carried you for 9 months, and you bring me another man, yeah. When I want when we want you to bring a woman and get children, yeah, you see. So I think the voice out here is so much against LGBTQ. And sorry, I joined late. I could have contributed to this when this discussion was ongoing. But I think being my maiden speech in this discussion, you'll forgive me for taking you back. Yeah, but I'm very passionate about issues of gender-based violence, which I do every day. I write court reports for children who have been defiled. I return children using the presidential bursary, children who have stayed out of school within my sub-county. I assist them get back to school and so on. So I've really been following up on what Amnesty International is doing over the years. And when I saw an opportunity to become a member and contribute to the great work that you people are doing, and what I see on TV so many times about Irungu and your team from across coming out to just raise your voice on particular issues, it is something that I'm passionate and I want to be part of. So thank you so much. Hopefully Friday I can come to your office. I think I'll be in Nairobi tomorrow. Next week I'll be in Machakos for a UN function for 1 week, but I'll be available on Friday, so I'll pass by.
Thank you very much. First of all, let me just thank you for your service to particularly vulnerable communities, and just to say that there are a number of staff that are on the call, so we will make sure, even if we are still in hybrid, that there is somebody here to receive you and for you to receive your I guess your we don't call them gifts as well, but the things that you get as a member. Maybe it's getting a bit late, so I think
thank you. I hope I can get your contact, Irungu, so that I reach
absolutely.
out.
I'll put my email on the group now. Everybody is welcome to reach it. It's also on the public domain as well. Let me just see whether Japheth, you're there. If you want to do a closing 1 minute comment before we pull this to an end. If not, we will draw this to an end. Again, those of you who have not gone to the link, just populate that link, give some guidance to the members of parliament as they develop this important democracy caucus. Japheth, over to you.
Thank you, Irungu. I think just in my final comments, that it's been really an honor and privilege to be part of this discussion, and it's been a dynamic, vibrant comments and insightful comments from the participants, and I look forward to future engagements in the next 9 discussions that are scheduled. Thank you. Over to you, Irungu.
Okay, excellent. Thank you very much. And we're a little bit over time, but just allow me to just quickly run through the next set of Kikao. So the Hangouts basically will resume again on the 12th of April. And there we will have an expert take us through financial bankruptcy, health insurance, and the right to health. And then we'll have one in May. That one is focusing on media freedoms. 2 days ago, we were speaking to the widows of Ashraf Sharif, the Pakistani journalist who was shot last year. And we're trying to see whether we can do something to accelerate their case for justice. And then we've got a series of other activities coming up. Experts will speak on the issue of refugeeism, sexuality, teenage pregnancies and reproductive health, youth power, disability rights, the death penalty, Ficha Uchi, which sounds like it could be exciting, but it's not so much to do with nakedness, but really looking at how do we protect ourselves online. It's to do with data governance and data protection. And then the last one on the 13th of December will be an opportunity to reflect on the 75th anniversary of the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. With that, I will bring us to a close, just to say that you know, as you have heard on this call, our movement is, you know, of people of all faiths, people of all genders, people of all ages, classes, parties, political parties, locations, occupations. And I just want to thank you all for demonstrating that by showing up this evening and participating in this conversation. As we walk throughout this public, please look for the ones that need our help, that need us to engage and continue to serve people who are at risk of human rights violations. If you're not a member of a circle of conscience, let me just create this very quickly for you. You should be aware that there are a number of members who have begun to participate in chapters, local chapters of Amnesty, and it's very likely that there is a chapter close to you. So if you are not, you know, if you're not in a member of a circle of conscience and you would like to, allow me to just put on the group very quickly the email that you can use to be able to reach out and be advised on which chapter is close to you, and that is amnesty at amnesty.or.ke. Amnesty at amnesty.
Irungu, just say that again. It's amnesty.kenya. Amnesty.kenya at amnesty.or.ke.
Thank you very much, Billy. Amnesty.kenya at amnesty.or.ke. Correct, Billy?
Amnesty.kenya at amnesty.or.ke.
Irungu, are you able to type it very quickly? I've seen it. Thank you.
It's in the chat. Wonderful. Thank you. So if you're interested in reaching out to members who are in your locality or working on the issues, and I know there are some of you who have been dying to set up circles of conscience amongst lawyers and jurists, I will be calling you. You know who you are. I shall be calling you immediately after this to pull this together. It's time we had one of lawyers working on paralegalism. Good night, and thank you for joining us. Let's see each other again on April the 12th. Tell the other members that you know. This was fun. We will send out a readout of this meeting and maybe some resources on the issue. All the best and have a good evening, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Good evening.
Thank you. Good evening.
Thank you. Good night, Jocelyn and baby.
Thank you, Irungu. Thank you.
Bye-bye, everybody.
Bye-bye. Ini